What if the most sophisticated piece of technology in the known universe is not sitting on a high-tech desk or orbiting the planet in a billion-dollar satellite, but is currently coiled, silent, and waiting at the very base of your own spine? Imagine for a moment that your body is not a mere biological machine of meat, bone, and chemical reactions, but a dormant antenna, perfectly tuned to receive a frequency of consciousness that our modern, noisy world has forgotten how to even broadcast. We walk through our lives like people owning a supercomputer, but using it only as a paperweight, unaware of the lightning that lives inside the marrow. In the cold, quiet winter of 1937, a man named Gopi Krishna sat in a small, unassuming room in Kashmir. He was a humble clerk, a man of rigid routine, average health, and modest aspirations. He was not looking to become a god. He was simply seeking a bit of peace through his daily meditation. But on that fateful morning, as he focused his mind on the crown of his head, a roar like 1,000 waterfalls erupted inside his skull. He felt a stream of liquid light, a literal sensation of glowing, molten gold surging from the base of his tailbone, roaring up the hollow of his spine, and exploding into the depths of his brain. It was not a metaphor. It was not a poetic vision. It was a physical, terrifying, and violent displacement of energy that would change him forever. But what followed was not the instant bliss the spiritual brochures promise. Instead, Gopi Krishna entered a biological purgatory that lasted for years. He felt as if he were being burned alive from the inside out. His digestive system failed. He could not distinguish between hot and cold, and his mind teetered on the razor edge of total fragmentation. He described a state where he felt his soul was being dragged through a narrow pipe, a torment so intense that death seemed like a mercy he was being denied. Is this force real, or is it merely a poetic label for a profound psychological breakdown? This is the central mystery we are hunting today. We are exploring the thin, dangerous, and often blurred line between the genius and the madman, between the mystic who swims in the depths of the infinite and the psychotic who drowns in them. To understand the Kundalini, we must look at the human body through a lens that bridges the gap between ancient symbolic science and the raw, unyielding reality of our central nervous system. We must ask if the serpent is a myth or a biological ticking clock hidden in our DNA. We often think of our spine as a simple support pillar, a stack of calcified discs meant to keep us upright so we can move through the material world. But the ancient traditions of the East, from the forest-dwelling rishis of India to the hidden alchemists of the West, saw the spine differently. They saw it as a sacred hollow, a mountain path through which the fire of heaven must eventually pass. This is the original forgotten meaning behind the caduceus, the symbol of medicine you see on every hospital wall and ambulance today. Two serpents entwined around a central staff, meeting at the top. It is not just a logo for doctors. It is a technical map of your own hidden energy. The central staff is the Sushumna, the primary channel of power, while the two serpents represent Ida and Pingala, the lunar and solar currents that govern our breath and our perception. When these two currents are balanced, the third force, the Kundalini, is supposed to rise. But as Gopi Krishna discovered, if that rise is premature, if the wires of the nervous system are not properly insulated, the result is not enlightenment, but a catastrophic short circuit of the soul. He was a man who had accidentally plugged a toaster into a power plant. However, we must step carefully here. There is a seductive and highly dangerous trap in modern fast food spirituality that suggests every internal storm, every mood swing, or every strange physical sensation is a sign of divine revelation. We must be honest and recognize that the human mind is a fragile instrument, susceptible to countless glitches. Psychosis is a devastating reality, a tragic fragmentation of the self that can be triggered by trauma, chemical imbalances, or the reckless manipulation of these energies under the guidance of predatory or ignorant figures. There is a dark irony in the fact that gurus like Osho, or the various instant awakening workshops popping up in the West, often push seekers into states of emotional instability that they then label as progress. We must distinguish between the fire of the spirit and the fire of a fever. True awakening leads to integration, compassion, and a heightened sense of reality. Psychosis leads to isolation, grandiosity, and the inability to function in the world. The ancient masters knew this, which is why they guarded the serpent power with layers of strict ethics and physical preparation. They knew that a high-voltage current requires a high-quality conductor. Think of the Homo religiosus, the person of the ancient world. For them, the spiritual and the material were not two separate kingdoms at war with each other. They were two sides of the same coin. They didn't see a conflict between the body and the soul because they understood the body as the laboratory of the soul. Today, we have split these worlds apart. We have the clinical laboratory on one side, reducing us to neurotransmitters and hormones, and the prayer mat on the other, often ignoring the physical reality of the brain. This has left a vast, dark territory in the middle, a no man's land, where many modern seekers get lost, wandering between medical diagnoses and mystical fantasies. What if the genius we admire in figures like Krishnamurti was not an accident of birth, but the result of a biological reorganization? Jiddu Krishnamurti, one of the most profound thinkers of the 20th century, spoke of a mysterious and agonizing process that haunted his later years. He described intense, crushing pains in his spine and at the base of his skull, a sensation of his brain being physically altered by an external power. He didn't call it Kundalini, but the symptoms were unmistakable. It suggests that if we truly want to change our minds, we must be willing to let our bodies be rewritten at a cellular level. To understand the mechanics of this rewriting, we should look at the work of Itzhak Bentov, a brilliant scientist and inventor who refused to accept the divide between engineering and consciousness. Bentov proposed that the human body is a vibrating instrument, a complex system of oscillators that can be brought into entrainment. He discovered that under certain conditions of deep rhythmic breathing and meditation, the heart and the brain begin to resonate at a specific frequency, approximately 7 cycles per second. This resonance creates a standing wave in the fluid surrounding the brain, essentially massaging the primary centers of our gray matter. Bentov's research suggested that the Kundalini is actually a mechanical circuit, a bioacoustic feedback loop that, once triggered, turns the entire human organism into a polarized antenna. This antenna is then capable of picking up information directly from the vacuum of space-time. This isn't just mysticism, it is high-level biophysics. It implies that we are built to be cosmic receivers, but we are currently living in a state of static. But here is the question that should keep you awake at night. If your body is an antenna, what happens if the hardware is cluttered with the debris of a modern lifestyle? What happens if the internal wires are frayed by chronic stress, poor nutrition, and unresolved emotional trauma? When the current of the Kundalini hits that static, it doesn't create music. It creates a roar of noise that we call a breakdown. This is why the ancient schools of Hatha Yoga never started with the spirit. They started with the gut, the breath, and the muscles. The physical postures of yoga were never meant to be a gymnastics routine for a better beach body or a way to look good on social media. In their original context, they were a form of tempering the steel. They were designed to stretch the nerves, purify the blood, and expand the lung capacity so that the vessel of the body would be strong enough to hold the light. The goal was to make the person a better conductor of electricity. If you want to light up a city, you don't just need a generator, you need a grid that won't melt under the load. So if you feel this call, if you suspect that there is a dormant power within you, how do you actually hunt this mystery without becoming its victim? How do you distinguish between a genuine call of the soul and a trick of the ego? The answer lies in the radical and often ignored concept of the foundational vessel. The first step is not a complex meditation or a secret mantra, but a commitment to what the ancients called the yamas and niyamas. These are the ethical foundations of life: honesty, non-violence, and self-discipline. To the modern mind, these sound like boring moral suggestions, but in the science of the soul, they are the grounding wires. If you are not honest with yourself, the energy of the Kundalini will simply magnify your delusions. If you are violent or angry, it will magnify your rage. The power of the serpent is neutral, it is an amplifier. It will make you more of whatever you already are. This is why many awakened gurus end up in scandals. They had the power, but they lacked the character to ground it. If you are looking for a map, you must look toward lineages that have survived the test of centuries, not those that were invented in a weekend workshop in California. The Bihar School of Yoga in India remains one of the most respected institutions for this study. They teach a systematic, cautious approach, focusing first on shatkarma, or purification of the body. They understand that you cannot invite a king into a house that is full of trash. You must clean the house first. For those drawn to a more silent and contemplative path, the Vipassana tradition As preserved in the lineage of SN, Goenka provides an extraordinary tool for sharpening the knife of awareness. Vipassana teaches you to observe the sensations of your body without reacting to them. This is the ultimate safety mechanism. If you can sit with a sensation of intense heat or pressure and simply observe it without fear or craving, you have already begun to master the serpent. You are learning to be the observer of the fire rather than the person burning in it. But what about the truly deep monastic life? If you want to see the outer limits of human potential, you must look toward the Vajrayana traditions of Tibet. There, practitioners engage in tumo, or inner fire meditation. These monks have been documented by Harvard scientists sitting in sub-zero temperatures, draped in ice-cold sheets that they dry with the sheer heat of their bodies in a matter of minutes. This is not a miracle, it is the focused application of a biological reality. But notice that these monks do not start with the fire. They spend years, sometimes decades, practicing compassion, studying philosophy, and stabilizing their minds. They build a vast, sturdy ocean to hold the water of their realization. Ask yourself, are you truly willing to do the boring, quiet work? Are you willing to spend months just learning how to sit still, how to breathe correctly, and how to be a kinder, more stable person? Or are you just looking for a cosmic high, a spiritual shortcut to feel special? The hunt for the Kundalini is a hunt for the very source of our vitality, but it is a hunt that requires the humility of a student and the courage of a warrior. The mystery of the human body is that it is a temple that is constantly building and rebuilding itself. Every thought you think, every breath you take, and every meal you eat is a brick in that temple. Is your temple being built to withstand a storm of light, or is it just a temporary shelter meant to last until the next distraction comes along? Consider the possibility that your current limitations, your frustrations, and even your physical aches are not signs of failure, but the pressure of a growing spirit against a shell that has become too small. As we continue this descent into the architecture of the soul, we must look closer at the maps left behind by those who successfully navigated the fire. If you suspect that this energy is stirring within you, the first thing you must learn is the language of your own nerves. The signs are often subtle before they become overwhelming. It begins with what the ancient texts call kriyas, involuntary movements of the body that feel as if a hidden hand is plucking at your muscles. Have you ever felt a sudden sharp heat at the base of your spine that seemed to have no external cause? Or perhaps a sensation of cool wind blowing across your forehead in a room with no draft? These are not mere glitches. In the biological model of the Kundalini, these are the early tests of the circuitry. The body is trying to clear the nadis, or the subtle channels of energy, much like a plumber clears a pipe before increasing the water pressure. But here is where the hunter must be most vigilant. There is a specific phenomenon known as the rising of the cold fire. This is a state where the practitioner feels an intense, almost unbearable heat, yet the skin remains cool to the touch. This paradox is the hallmark of a genuine energetic shift. It is the body attempting to convert gross biological matter into a more refined form of vitality. However, we must return to the warning. If you find yourself in a state where you can no longer sleep, where food tastes like ash, or where the voices of your own subconscious are becoming louder than the world around you, you are not necessarily ascending. You might be experiencing a genuine clinical emergency. The distinction is crucial. A spiritual emergence feels like an expansion of the self to include more of reality. A psychotic break feels like a fragmentation where the self is lost in a sea of symbols it can no longer control. This is why we must emphasize the role of the vessel and the lineage. In our modern individualistic age, we hate the idea of needing a teacher. We want to be our own gurus, discovering everything through a smartphone app or a weekend retreat. But the Kundalini is a force of nature, like a hurricane or a wild tiger. You do not manage a hurricane, you learn to build a house that can survive it. If you are looking for a true training ground, you must seek places where the wires have been tested for 1,000 years. Consider the Bihar School of Yoga in Munga, India. This is not a place for yoga-lates or trendy fitness. It is a rigorous, traditional gurukul where the focus is on the total purification of the human instrument. They teach that before you ever try to wake up the serpent, you must first master Hatha Yoga in its purest form, not as exercise, but as a way to balance the lunar and solar flows within the body. Or consider the silent, heavy discipline of a Vipassana retreat in the tradition of SN Goenka. For 10 days you sit in total silence, observing the rising and falling of sensations without a single reaction. This practice is the ultimate lead shield for the radioactive energy of the Kundalini. It teaches you that you are not your sensations. It builds the mental muscle required to witness the fire without being consumed by the fear of it. If you are drawn to the more mind-blowing physical capabilities of this energy, the Vajrayana monasteries of the Himalayas, such as those in the Gelug or Kagyu lineages, offer a glimpse into the Tummo or inner fire. But be warned, these monks do not start with the fire. They start with years of nyondro or foundational practices. They do hundreds of thousands of prostrations to humble the ego. They spend years studying the philosophy of sunyata, or emptiness, to ensure that when the power comes, there is no I left to be corrupted by it. This is the great secret that the instant gurus of the 1970s and 80s, like Osho, often neglected. They gave people Shaktipat, a sudden spark of energy, without giving them the ethical and psychological grounding to hold it. The result was often a trail of broken lives, legal scandals, and psychological casualties. Power without character is a recipe for disaster, both for the individual and for the community. Ask yourself, are you seeking this because you want to be better than others, or because you want to be more useful to the world? The motive of the hunter determines the quality of the catch. Now, let us move into the final, most profound dimension of this mystery. Why does this energy exist at all? If we step away from the specific techniques and look at the big picture, we see something staggering. This is not just about your personal peace or your health. This is about the evolution of the human species. The philosopher and paleontologist Pierre Teilhard de Chardin proposed that we are moving toward an omega point, a final state of total consciousness. He suggested that evolution did not stop with the development of the human brain. Instead, the noosphere, the layer of human thought, is beginning to crystallize into a single planetary mind. In this context, the Kundalini is the biological engine of that transition. It is the pressure of the infinite, trying to squeeze itself into a finite container. But there is an even more paradoxical possibility. Some modern mystics and philosophers suggest that the Kundalini is not a legacy of our animal past, but a memory of the future. Imagine that your future self, the version of you that has already completed the journey and become one with the source, is reaching back through time. It is sending a signal, a high-voltage pulse, to wake you up in the present. From this perspective, the serpent isn't rising from the mud of the earth. It is descending from the light of the future. You are not a person trying to wake up an energy. You are an energy trying to wake up a person. The sensations you feel, the heat, the pressure, and even the divine madness of the search are just the friction caused by your current self, resisting the pull of your future self. This realization changes the entire nature of the search. It turns the hunt into a surrender. It means that the best way to activate the Kundalini is not to strive for it, but to remove the obstacles to it. It is to become transparent. But as we stand at this peak of understanding, we must face the ultimate dilemma of our digital age. We live in a world designed to keep us in a state of constant, low-level distraction. Our attention is being harvested by algorithms that thrive on our anxiety and our desire for the superficial. This digital static is the literal opposite of the resonance required for the Kundalini. We are at a crossroads. We can choose to become silicon men, integrated with machines, living in a purely material and simulated reality where the spirit is seen as a bug in the code. Or we can choose to become light men, reclaiming the ancient technology of the spine and the breath to unlock a potential that no machine can ever replicate. The danger is real. To wake up is to realize that the world you thought was real is a thin, fragile dream. It is to step out of the cave and look directly at the sun. It will hurt. It will challenge every relationship you have, every belief you hold, and every comfort you cherish. But what is the alternative? To stay in the cave until the shadows consume you. The mystery of the Kundalini is the mystery of your own existence. It is the question that you were born to answer. You are a bridge between the animal and the divine, between the mud and the stars. The serpent is waiting. The fire is ready. The question is, are you? As you return to your daily life, do not look for the serpent in books or in the promises of charismatic strangers. Look for it in the quality of your own attention. Look for it in the silence between your breaths. Look for it in the way you treat the person next to you. Build your vessel with integrity. strengthen your nerves with discipline, and above all, maintain your wonder. Because the universe is not just out there, it is pulsing inside you, waiting for the moment you finally decide to open the door and let it in. And that's our hunt for now, a wild mix of documented history and tantalizing what-ifs based on bibliographical sources. What do you think? Is the human body a dormant god, or just a sophisticated ape with a very vivid imagination? If these journeys into the unknown resonate with you, consider subscribing so we can continue this hunt together. The mystery is vast, and we have only just begun to scratch the surface.